Oh! Hello, fellow film fans. Today I'll be reviewing Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis, released in theaters a couple weeks ago and might still be playing in theaters now. Like usual, my reviews have spoilers, so please tread carefully. Francis Ford Coppola has always been adept at creating and committing to a unique, consistent vision for a movie. Sometimes it works, like Apocalypse Now, and sometimes it doesn't, like One from the Heart. But where he's not always been great is cohesion. When I think of Godfather 3, the first thing I think of is how Sofia Coppola destroyed every scene in which she appeared. But probably more destructive, the movie is an incomprehensible mess. I've seen it many, many times and still couldn't tell you exactly what it's about.
Well, I'm beyond redemption.
The Michael storyline in Godfather 2 suffered from the same problem, but was ultimately lifted by its immense emotional power. Now Coppola brings us Megalopolis, the infamously self-financed, decades in the making, studio-busting opus that looks like a studio-produced video game. True to form, halfway through the movie, and I know because I kept looking at my watch, I still didn't really know what this movie was about. It takes place in what appears to be a cross between modern-day New York City and ancient Rome. The city is indeed called New Rome and is being torn apart by rivals, a visionary artist, Adam Driver, who can stop time for no apparent reason or outcome, and the incumbent mayor, Giancarlo Esposito, who's infatuated with the status quo. It's confusing from the outset because Driver, dressed in all black, perched atop a tower overlooking the entire world and literally looking down on the commons, has villainous vibes, while Esposito seems like he should be corrupt, but doesn't actually do or say anything that would make him corrupt. We learn way too late that he withheld evidence a long time ago that would have exonerated Driver from killing his wife, but Driver was exonerated anyway, and this all happened before the timeline of the movie. Esposito has a daughter, Natalie Emanuel, who falls for Driver, and Driver is financed by a well-endowed typhoon, John Voight, who has a spoiled brat son looking for his unearned lot in life, played by Shia LaBeouf. One of the odd things about Megalopolis is how the Vying powers keep showing up at public events to have face-to-face spats, giving off ancient vibes, but also making the movie look small. And that's a problem for a movie whose top billing is its supposed spectacle. Everything, exterior shots included, looked like it was filmed on a soundstage with the preponderance of overcooked magic hour sunlight. It was so relentlessly artificial that even near the beginning, a random outdoor shot in natural daylight was so relieving it was like finally popping your head out of the water when you've long been out of breath. At these big events, the crowds don't feel real, and when we can clearly see real people, the shots are tight and not expansive, adding to the enclosed feeling. At one point, the city erupts in riots, but we see one shot of that from a couple hundred feet up, and doesn't amount to anything. Nevertheless, it's at one of these public events in a modern indoor, of course, arena that's meant to be a stand-in for the Roman Colosseum, replete with WWE-type fighting and other bouts of spectacle, where LaBeouf kickstarts his ambition of taking over the city. He pretends to be a populist everyman to rile people up with empty rhetoric, while he's really just angling for power and his father's money. Sound familiar? Unfortunately, despite this thread being the only aspect of the story that has a modern corollary, it comes and goes throughout the movie and ultimately has little to no impact. More unfortunate is that this Colosseum sequence is one of the longest, most tedious in the entire movie. It's been well reported that Coppola had been working on this idea intermittently since the 80s. Maybe one of the problems with that, aside from maybe not being compelling enough to get tracked, is that the cultural or political forces that inspired his vision probably aren't as relevant now, which leads me to believe that the LaBeouf thread is something Coppola came up with more recently and tried to mix into the story he'd been baking for 40 years. The bigger problem is that Coppola seems to have obsessed over a concept, or a concept of a plan, for something that could top his early successes or at least maintain his status as a living legend. But he didn't obsess nearly enough over the characters. The result is that we never care about anyone or anything that happens to anyone. When a main character gets shot point blank in the face, we don't care. When his recovery is miraculously short to the point that it might as well have never happened, we still don't care. I certainly wasn't relieved that he was okay, just puzzled, and maybe relieved that with each passing minute the ending was nearer. Maybe Coppola was just so intent on living up to his reputation that he missed the forest for the trees. If he'd instead just tried to make good movies that spoke to him, the occasional one might have come along that turned out great. Other 70s legends like Martin Scorsese and the late Billy Friedkin seem to take that approach, and both made excellent movies late in their careers. Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon was one of last year's best, with all the ambition and scope that Coppola seemed to be shooting for, but turning that into a real time and place with memorable, empathetic characters and world-class performances. Not a meandering pseudo-melodrama mired in artifice. Megalopolis has all the bark of an ambitious picture, but none of the bite. So that's my take on Megalopolis. Overall, I give it a 2 out of 10. It was a complete mess, but worse than that, I think, at least to me, was just how it looked, how contained it looked, how artificial it looked, and the fact that it looked like every other piece of superhero studio slop that gets released these days. Very, very disappointing. If you like this video, please feel free to give it a like. If you enjoy my channel's content, please feel free to subscribe. If you want to contribute to the conversation, feel free to drop something in the comments. I'll try to respond to everybody. Otherwise, thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you next time.